Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing well. So because we have hit a new year, 2021, I thought it might be fun, might be interesting to go through my entire unread pile. My entire TBR pile, all of the books that I own but have not yet read. Just because we're at the beginning of the year and it might be interesting to just take stock of where I'm at. Because I'm currently looking at my TBR trolley and I'm a bit like, oh, that's quite a few books there. That being said, I know that when it comes to booktube and TBRs, mine is actually quite small. If I've done my counting correctly, I believe I've got about 28 books that are unread on my TBR trolley, which in the grand scheme of things on booktube is very, very small. I know people who have like hundreds of unread books, and that is perfectly acceptable. Everybody's TBR piles are their own. Many people on booktube actually prefer to have lots and lots of books, so they have lots of choices and options. However, for me, I'm not gonna lie to you, I find having lots of unread books on my TBR pile really stressful. I think some people would describe it as being the paralysis of choice, but for me, I actually find it's the lack of choice that having a lot of books already there on my unread pile actually gives me. The lack of choice being there because I am very much a mood reader. I am very much like, I will find something, I'll be like, oh, I want to read that now. And that does not always correlate with the piles of books that I already own. So actually I find that having a lot of unread books leaves me with a lack of choice because I cannot freely go to the exact book that I want to because I feel beholden to my previous self who bought books that are not compatible with my present self. If that makes any sense. It probably doesn't. So I would like to work to get that number down at the beginning of this year. That is not me saying that I'm going on a book buying ban by any means, but I would like to reduce the amount that I buy. Especially because right now I don't have a job, so it'd be kind of good to not buy books. And also I'm very much thinking about the video that I made a couple of weeks ago, which was all about my 2021 TBR, which included a lot of books which I do not own that I am so excited to read, but I don't have them yet. They are not on my actual physical TBR pile, but I want to get to those books, but I don't feel like I can get to those books without reading a few of these ones that I've got right beside me first. I initially was going to film today a video all about like my 2021 goals and resolutions, and it was initially going to be a bit of a joke of all of these different things that over the past couple of months I've written down saying, oh, I'd quite like to do this year, and it was things like read all of Dickens, read all of Shakespeare, read more short story collections, read more poetry, and eventually I just thought, you know what, let's scrap all of that. What I really need to do is get to these TBR books first. Once I've dealt with them, then we can see about any other grand goals and resolutions. So enough chatting, let's just get into the books which you have all come for. I'm just going to start off with a book that isn't technically on my physical TBR pile because I've read it already, but it is a book that I am reading this year, which is Les Mis by Victor Hugo. Have I mentioned that I am rereading this? So it is currently the 3rd of January when I am doing this video, and so far I am 2 books into Les Mis. I'm about 100 pages in so far and I'm loving it so much. This is a reread for me, but it is a first time for a lot of people who are currently participating in our Discord server, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm having so much joy reading this. It's not too late to join if you are interested in reading Les Mis, if that's been on your TBR pile for a while. We're actually spreading out the reading of this book over 3 months, so there is plenty of time to jump in and get involved. Now getting into my actual TBR, I'm going to start off with A Poem for Every Winter Day, edited by Ali Asiri. This is another book that is going to be slowly poured over 3 months. I'm actually currently a little bit behind. I'm currently on the 29th of December, but I am planning on catching up soon. And hopefully, if all goes to plan, I will get this read on time, 28th, 29th of December, depending on where it stops in this book. I think it stops on the 29th, which obviously we don't have this year because it's a leap year or not. You already know this. But end of February, this will get checked off. The next 2 books on my TBR pile are 2 books in the same series, which are Ethelred the Unready by Richard Abels and William I by Mark Morris. These are 2 of the books in the Penguin Monarch series, which is a series that I was doing my own little video series based around, and yes, I am planning on bringing that back in the new year. I'm actually currently about 10 pages into Ethelred, so as long as I get all my notes done, as long as I finish it and plan everything well, we will be getting back to the Penguin Monarch series this year. And I feel like the Penguin Monarch series is going to be a little bit of an exception to any sort of book buying ban. Like, I'm continuing this series, which means that I need to pick up the next installments. Next up, we've got a book that I am currently both physically reading and also listening to the audiobook, kind of batting backwards and forwards, which is British on Race, Identity and Belonging by Afua Hirsch. This is a book that is kind of part memoir, part just like general non-fiction, all about Afua Hirsch's experience with race in Britain. All about her experiences of growing up mixed race and kind of feeling a lack of identity. She grew up in London not feeling quite British, but then when she was older she moved to Ghana and felt like she wasn't truly Ghanaian either. This kind of inner struggle that she felt for really being able to carve out her identity. I'm currently 54 pages into this so far and I am enjoying every second of it. On a similar vein, we have Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire by Akala. This is a book that I have had for quite a while and I'm so excited for it. As David Olusoga says on the front, it says it is part biography, part polemic. This powerful study picks apart the British myth of meritocracy. I actually feel like both of these will be quite good to read back to back. Then we are starting to dig into the history non-fiction on my list. We have Uncrowned Queen, The Fateful Life of Margaret Beaufort, Tudor Matriarch by Nicola Tallis. This tells the story of the mother of King Henry VII, Margaret Beaufort, who was an incredibly fascinating woman and was really the backbone to the Tudor dynasty. I've recently been listening to Nicola Tallis on different podcasts talking about Margaret Beaufort, and I'm so excited. I need to stop saying that, but I am so excited to read this. Back to fiction, we have The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Dare. This was actually a gift from my best friend Sophie, so thank you, Sophie. We then have The Social Life of Books, Reading Together in the 18th Century Home by Abigail Williams. During my history degree, I was a big fan of learning about print culture and literacy and just generally how people read together in the early modern period. This kind of feels like a return to my academic roots, so to speak. So yes, really keen to read this. Then we have Troy by Stephen Fry, which I'm currently 97 pages into so far. I've been really enjoying this so far, but we've not quite gotten to the Trojan War yet, so I'm like trucking along. Then we have Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. This was the winner of the Booker Prize in 2020. I've only read 18 pages of this so far, but it looks really interesting. I'm quite keen to see what I think of this because I find Booker Prize books a little bit hit or miss, just generally because I'm not a massive literary fiction fan. It can sometimes be a little bit too much for me, but then a lot of people who are really into the Booker Prize were kind of disappointed with this because they didn't find it quite as literary. So maybe it will kind of bridge that gap for me and I will really enjoy it. Next is The Betrayals by Bridget Collins, a book that I treated myself to for Christmas because I was such a massive fan of The Binding by Bridget Collins. And once again, can we just have a moment for that under the dust jacket? As I said before, this is a book that could kind of go either way because it doesn't seem like my typical genre, but then The Binding was not my typical genre. It kind of had this historical fiction and fantasy kind of blend together, which is not usually my typical cup of tea. But Bridget Collins just wrote her characters so incredibly well, and I was so intrigued by the plot. So I'm hoping the exact same happens with this. A little bit more early medieval non-fiction, we have Alfred's Britain, War and Peace in the Viking Age by Max Adams. This is something I found in a charity shop and was really prompted to read because I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed reading the first of the Penguin Monarchs series book, which was Athelstan, the Making of England. Whereas this focuses on Alfred the Great, so a couple of generations before, he was actually Athelstan's grandfather. And I feel like kind of shockingly for a history student and a history student who studied at York no less, I've never really been that interested in the Vikings. I think that might be purely because we never really touched upon them in like primary school or secondary school. That being said, I do have this little Viking hat. So I found this at my granddad's house and I thought, brilliant, maybe I'll wear it whilst I'm reading this. Though any historian will want me to tell you that they didn't actually tend to wear helmets like this. Next up, we have the Sonnets by William Shakespeare. I'm slowly making my way through this. I'm actually up to sonnet 28 and I am so enjoying these so far. Because I'm enjoying it so much, I don't want to rush it. I quite like the fact that I'm slowly pouring over these over time. Though I will say, I think people will find the procreation sonnets a little bit Marmite. You get to the end of them and you feel like you've just been bashed over the head multiple times being told, have children, goddammit! And it's like, stop yelling at me, Will, what if I don't want to have children? Oh! Next, we're getting into a couple of historical fiction titles, starting with Now We Shall Be Entirely Free by Andrew Miller. And like, look at this beautiful cover with this pretty Regency lady. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that was the main sell of this book to me. I also have The Familiars by Stacey Halls. I previously had read The Foundling by Stacey Halls and just kind of found it a bit meh, but I have heard such glowing reviews about The Familiars, especially from Shah at Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. So I'm hoping that I will thoroughly enjoy this. It's also a slightly different time period. We are looking at the 17th century as opposed to the late 18th, early 19th century. What was The Foundling? So The Foundling was kind of the mid 18th century. This is the early 17th century. So maybe the different setting, the different plot, the different characters might work a little bit better for me with this. Next we have City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I'm not gonna lie to you, this is one of the books that I am most tempted to unhaul. It's another historical fiction, it's set in the 1940s, and I've heard so many people say that it's really good, but it just currently doesn't really appeal to me, but I feel like I should give it a chance. And I have a similar feeling about Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Everybody has raved about this, but my level of interest is really low right now. But we will persevere. And the same kind of thing with Three Women by Lisa Tadeo, even though I know that Grace from GK Reads loves this book. So we will see how we go. Why do I buy things I don't know if I want to read? It makes no sense. We then also have The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. This is the third and final book of Donna Tartt's that I still need to read. I picked this up because Kieran over at KD Books absolutely loves The Little little friend, he says that this is his favourite Donatart. And I'm a bit trepidatious because I know that that is a bit of an unpopular opinion. I know so many people say that they love The Secret History or they love The Goldfinch, but then they found this just to be a bit blah. And for me with Donatart, I know that I love The Secret History. It's one of my favourite books I've ever read. I found The Goldfinch just kind of middling, so I don't know. I don't know. The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. I mainly picked this up because Shah is such a massive Sarah Waters fan, and I saw it in a charity shop and I thought, well, let's start on Sarah Waters now. Back to our history non-fiction, we have The House of Beaufort, The Bastard Lion That Captured the Crown by Nathan Amen. Even though we are dealing with the Beaufort House again, this is more dealing with their contribution to the Wars of the Roses, which was quite a big contribution. Basically, how the House of Beaufort kind of rose from being a bit of an outsider family into being one of the most prominent families in England. Henry VIII, The Decline and Fall of a Tyrant by Robert Hutchinson, a book that I have kind of discussed and shown on my channel before, which, as you can kind of tell from that title, and I can tell from the back, seems to have quite a negative view of Henry VIII. And like I say, I've not read this yet, but I found the discussion about this topic really, really interesting in my comment section the last time I mentioned this. How much Henry VIII in popular consciousness is really characterized by how he appeared in his final years. So much so that when historians start talking about like the younger Henry VIII and talk about how like athletic and charismatic he was, a lot of people kind of dismiss that. They think it's like false history because they're so used to seeing Henry VIII as he was in his later life, seeing him as this tyrannical king. Henry VIII for me is such a hard one to pin down because on the one hand, I find myself having a lot of sympathy for him. And then I think about the things he did and I'm like, nah. Then we have The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. This will be the first Philippa Gregory book I read. Oh, my bookmark's falling out. And I really want to do a video all about my reaction to Philippa Gregory for the first time. I have seen the film, so I do know some of the choices that she makes, but I've never read the book. So we will get there eventually. Wife After Wife by Olivia Hayfield, which is another one that I have wanted to do a reading vlog on. This is a modern retelling of Henry VIII and his 6 wives, and it's all about this business tycoon, Harry Rose, and he somehow goes through 6 wives just like the historical Henry VIII. And as I've said before, I feel like this is either going to be complete trash or it's going to be my trash. And I'm really excited to find out because it looks so fun. Also because there is going to be a sequel to this, Sister to Sister, which is focused on Mary and Elizabeth, or the modern equivalents of Mary and Elizabeth, and I want to read that. Next we have Ulysses by James Joyce. Now I'm kidding. I am interested to read this. I got this was gifted to me by Kieran at KD Books, and we are going to get to this probably after we finish reading Les Mis. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I approached that book with a bit of trepidation, mainly because I'm not a massive fan of stream of consciousness style, and I know that that is full of it. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. The second Victor Hugo novel on this list is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame de Paris as it is known in its original title. I'm very, very keen to see what I think of this after reading Les Mis for a second time. I feel like Hunchback and Les Mis are always compared side by side. I've heard people say that on a technical level that Hunchback is much better, it's much tighter. Victor Hugo kind of restrains himself a little bit more, but then I just love Les Mis so much, so maybe I won't like this because of that. And once again, let's just have a moment for this gorgeous cover and these gorgeous end papers. The penultimate book on this TBR pile is Kings and Queens of the British Isles, A History of Monarchy, which is a production that was done by The Times. I have been like slowly pouring over this, mainly as and when I get to the different Penguin Monarchs books. This is a really nice introduction to British history, especially the history of the British monarchy. So if you want to kind of dip your toes into this history, then I definitely recommend this. And then finally, you know what's coming, you know. This is the biggest book on my TBR pile. It's also the book that has been on my TBR pile the longest, and I've determined that I will read it this year. It's War and Peace by Lev Tolstoy. We're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. I have no fear. Non-bookish things that grace my TBR pile are all of the history magazines that I have dipped into like certain articles off, but I haven't read cover to cover. It was my mission in July during the Finish-a-thon that I was gonna finish all of my history magazines, and I didn't quite do it, and now more of them have come through my door. And like I say, it's not like it's a waste of money. I do read the articles in here. I just don't tend to read them cover to cover before a new one has dropped through my door. But I need to get on top of this because that's quite a few magazines to read. And it's not like they are fun little short articles that I can just breeze through. Like, it takes some reading, it takes some concentration. We will get there. It's fine. It's fine. So yeah, those are all of the books on my TBR pile right now. I'm definitely gonna have to insert a clip of what my bed looks like right now because it's a lot. It's a lot.
This is fine. It's fine. It's a lot, but it's fine. It's fine.
I've just realised I've got to put all of these back now. No! Do let me know if you've read any of the books that are currently on my TBR pile and what you thought of them, any books that you think I definitely should pick up first. If you know and you're brave enough to tell me, let me know how many books you've got on your TBR pile. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye!